What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with another Destiny 2 Season of the Haunted video. And in this one we're going to speak about weapons once again, and this time we'll be focusing on endgame weapons for the season, their potential perk rolls, and some of the top rolls to look out for. This does include dungeon weapons, as we can now see all of the potential perk rolls on them, but also since we're talking new endgame content, we'll look at the recently added Nightfall weapons and their best potential rolls, as well as upcoming trials and adept weapons, and a couple of drops from the Iron Banner, with a view to focus in once again on the more kind of endgame higher tier rewards that we have access to in weapons this season. So as always guys, I hope you enjoy the video and find it useful, and without further delay, let's get into it. And initially, we should speak about Nightfall weapons right here. And a returning weapon from year 1 is the DFA hand cannon, an adaptive frame kinetic hand cannon. And so looking at the top traits in each of the slots, for barrels, one of the best options will be corkscrew rifling, as of course it does boost stability, handling, and range. There's also hammer forged rifling, and that gives the biggest range boost in the barrels. And then chambered compensator is also pretty good, as well as arrowhead break. Then also for barrels, you can roll full bore, extended barrel, fluted barrel, small bore, and polygonal rifling. But for magazines, it can roll accurized rounds, which is definitely going to be a top pick for the weapon. Then there's also options of tactical mag, appended mag, or flared magwell, which are really the next best options before things like steady rounds, extended mag, and alloy magazine. And then as we look at the traits right here, in slot 1, we can get perpetual motion, fragile focus, tunnel vision, triple tap, steady hands, or outlaw. So of course outlaw is a very standout bonus. And the other top options for this type of weapon typically would be things like perpetual motion, steady hands, or triple tap, depending on what content you're running. Then in the second slot, it's possible to roll rampage, vorpal weapon, opening shot, focused fury, timed payload, or wellspring. And so obviously rampage is a very popular one there, as is timed payload. So we're seeing popular trait combos of things like perpetual motion and vorpal weapon, or triple tap focused fury. And we shouldn't forget possibilities like outlaw and rampage, or of course outlaw focused fury, or even triple tap and vorpal weapon. It's safe to say there's a lot of possibility with the DFA, so let us know any good rolls you have down below. The other reintroduced Nightfall weapon for the season though is the Horror's Least, a rapid fire frame arc pulse rifle. And again looking at things like corkscrew rifling, even extended barrel, or for better recoil arrowhead break, all the multiple bonuses you get from things like chambered compensator. Then all of those top magazine bonuses are present on the weapon as well, whether you want to focus on higher range with accurized rounds, or more of the ammo style bonuses like extended mag and flared magwell. Then for traits though, it can roll steady hands, zen moment, under pressure, perpetual motion, compulsive reloader, or heating up in the first slot, with kill clip, focused fury, high impact reserves, turnabout, vorpal weapon, and frenzy in the second slot. So for a lot of players on this type of weapon, things like steady hands, potentially zen moment, or heating up could be pretty interesting. Compulsive reloader is an option right there if you do constantly reload early, and then combinations like steady hands or kill clip. Even zen moment and heating up, as well as focused fury, have some interesting potential. And since we'll typically get multiple kills with this kind of weapon, even damage bonuses like frenzy are worth looking at. So let us know your thoughts down below on the new Nightfall weapons this season. And next, let's speak about dungeon weapons. So for the first time, we can actually see the bonuses for these. And starting out with the new purpose pulse rifle, it's a high impact frame stasis pulse. And looking at the top bonuses right here, for the barrels, arrowhead break, corkscrew rifling, or chambered compensator are probably the strongest bonuses on the weapon. Then in the magazines, it can get ricochet rounds and high caliber rounds, so both of those are going to be really good on a pulse rifle. There is also armor piercing rounds as well. Then in the first trade slot, some of the more popular bonuses include perpetual motion, feeding frenzy, tunnel vision, or well-rounded. It can also get steady hands and heating up. However, the second trait slot is able to roll Desperado, the reworked damage perk for this season, as well as things like vorpal weapon, adaptive munitions, and headstone, but it can also get focused fury or harmony in that slot. So as you can imagine, overall, Desperado is one of the top perks that you could roll on this weapon, combining things like perpetual motion, tunnel vision, well-rounded, feeding frenzy, and Desperado are going to be really, really strong. And of course, there is also the option to combine any of those bonuses with things like vorpal weapon, headstone, and adaptive munitions, dependent on preference. So for a high impact pulse rifle, New Purpose definitely has a lot going for it. Next though for the dungeon, there is the Unforgiven submachine gun. It's an aggressive frame void SMG. And the top barrel options would include corkscrew rifling, chambered compensator, arrowhead break, or hammer forged rifle in. Then in the magazine, once again ricochet rounds, high caliber rounds, and armor piercing rounds are present. And flared magwell wouldn't be a bad option for quick reloading either. And then in the first trait slot, demolitionist, as well as feeding frenzy and tunnel vision are some of the top bonuses. Plus it can roll steady hands, well-rounded, and fragile focus in that slot. Then slot 2 can roll frenzy, as well as rampage, or adrenaline junkie, golden tricorn, dragonfly, and repulsor brace. That actually gives this weapon loads of interesting options. So for trait combos, looking at things like Feeding Frenzy and Frenzy, obviously, would be a lot of fun. There's Demolitionist and Adrenaline Junkie, or Feeding Frenzy and Rampage. These are all really good kind of super meta roles for the weapon. But of course, there are other options like Steady Hands and Frenzy. And not forgetting the fact that the weapon can roll Dragonfly, which I believe Demolitionist will actually stack with to give bonus grenade energy. So there's some interesting considerations for this weapon as well. And then we have the Storm Chaser, the new linear fusion rifle in an aggressive frame, and it allows the weapon to fire a 3-round burst, so you get 3 shots for every single 1 ammo. And in the barrels, corkscrew rifling is a pretty good option, as it's giving bonuses to stability, handling, and range. Arrowhead break is another really good one, and it controls recoil, which isn't bad on this weapon since it does fire those 3 rounds at once. But also chambered compensator and fluted barrel are pretty decent options. And then for the batteries, liquid coils is going to allow the weapon to fire a good bit faster. And because of how many rounds it's firing, that will be a solid DPS increase overall. But enhanced battery, particle repeater, and accelerated coils are options as well. And then for the traits in slot 1, clown cartridge, rapid hit, or auto-loading holster are some of the better bonuses, but it can roll well-rounded, turnabout, and rangefinder as well. With the second trait slot, potentially seeing firing line, Vorpal weapon, frenzy, or rampage, and then it can also roll adaptive munitions and demolitionist as well. So as you can imagine, clown cartridge and firing line are going to be very good on this weapon, randomly having the magazine overfill from reserves, and then the bonus damage that comes from firing line on an archetype which is already beating most linear fusion rifles as far as I'm aware, is going to be really strong. Also combos like rapid hit and Vorpal weapon, because rapid hit procs pretty much the first time you hit all 3 rounds on a target, which is just 1 time firing the weapon, and then Vorpal weapon because the damage bonus is active for bosses all of the time. But other options include clown cartridge and frenzy, well-rounded and fire in line, and possibly even turnabout fire in line could be pretty good options for the weapon. The final new unique weapon for the dungeon is the Lingering Dread, a lightweight frame kinetic grenade launcher. And for barrels, volatile launch, hard launch, quick launch, or countermass are some of the top options. Then in the magazines, blinding grenades, spike grenades, or high velocity rounds are pretty good. Then we have the trait columns, so auto-loading holster, ambitious assassin, and feeding frenzy are some of the top bonuses in the first slot, although it can roll well-rounded, steady hands, and unrelenting there as well. Then in the second slot, we can get chill clip, as well as Vorpal weapon, demolitionist, multi-kill clip, danger zone, and harmony. And so naturally, some of the popular trait combos include auto-loading holster and chill clip, or indeed ambitious assassin and chill clip. The good thing with chill clip is it's always active, I believe, with the weapon, since it's referring to the top half of a magazine with 1 round in it. But also ambitious assassin, demolitionist, or feeding frenzy Vorpal are really solid options, and there are other good potential roles here as well. So give us your thoughts on those dungeon weapons. Which takes us to 2 of the craftable dungeon weapons, and these were reprised opulence weapons. So there is the fixed odds machine gun in a high impact frame with solar damage. And for main traits, we see things like feeding frenzy, under pressure, quick draw, and fill prep in the first slot, with killing tally, where kills increase the weapon's damage until it is stowed or reloaded, as well as incandescent, rampage, firing line, rangefinder, and focus fury. And so immediately, feeding frenzy and killing tally on this weapon is going to be really, really good. Be able to absolutely chew through enemies with that. But it can get under pressure incandescent or under pressure and killing tally once again. Killing tally is going to be one of the top bonuses for this weapon. But if not, rampage is really good, of course, and feeding frenzy rampage is a nice setup. Plus there's the option to focus on firing line if you're looking for DPS, although these weapons are typically better for ad control and things like that. The other craftable dungeon weapon is the Epicurean, a precision frame void fusion rifle. And in the traits, it can roll quick draw, snapshot, feeding frenzy, Well-Rounded, and Surplus as some of the popular perks in trait slot 1, with slot 2 seeing Rangefinder, Backup Plan, Repulsor Brace, and Cornered as top bonuses, and so combining Snapshot Sights and Rangefinder, or Quick Draw and Backup Plan are pretty good, but then Feeding Frenzy or Well-Rounded and Rangefinder are nice. Even Feeding Frenzy and Swashbuckler could be pretty good as well. And now let's move away from dungeon stuff and onto some of the PvP weapons for the season. And initially we have the Trials Fusion Rifle, Burden of Guilt, which is an adaptive frame stasis fusion. And looking at the traits in slot 1, Elemental Capacitor, as well as Killing Wind, Perpetual Motion, Steady Hands, Stats for All, and Well-Rounded are options, with slot 2 seeing the potential of Harmony, High Impact Reserves, Chill Clip, Swashbuckler, Vorpal Weapon, and Successful Warm-Up. So of course it will depend on what kind of content you're playing, but for PvP, Killing Wind isn't a bad option. Plus Perpetual Motion and Steady Hands are going to be fairly decent as well. Then in slot 2, Chill Clip combined with those could be pretty good, as will Vorpal Weapon and Swashbuckler, but of course there are PvE options here as well which could be pretty decent, like Well-Rounded, Stats for All, or Elemental Capacitor and Successful Warm-Up. As well as Harmony, all have some potential as well. Of course, since this is Trials, we also get adept versions of these weapons. And there is also the Forgiveness Sidearm, an aggressive burst sidearm with arc damage, so that makes it interesting. And in the trait slots, Demolitionist, Air Assault, Subsistence, Killing Wind, Well-Rounded, and Moving Target can roll in the first slot, with the second slot seeing Rapid Hit, Harmony, Multi-Kill Clip, Vorpal Weapon, Fragile Focus, or Adrenaline Junkie. If you were leaping around in the Crucible all over the place, Air Assault actually could be okay, as could Killing Wind or Moving Target. Then in the second slot, of course, Rapid Hit is always a helpful bonus. But if you're making kills, Multi-Kill Clip could be okay as well. And it would be interesting to see what Fragile Focus adds to the weapon range-wise. And then Vorpal Weapon is present if you like that as well. The other PvP weapons to focus on that are new, or reprised for the season, should we say, come from the Iron Banner, where of course we do get the Hero's Burden Adaptive Frame SMG. And the top perks people are looking at the moment include Hammer-Forged Rifling, Corkscrew Rifling, and Full Bore in the barrels, with Ricochet rounds, High Cal, and Armor-Piercing rounds being the top options in the magazines. And then in the traits, Fragile Focus is really popular. The weapon gains bonus range until the wielder takes damage, not a bad option on an SMG. And then Zen Moment and Air Assault are pretty popular too. Then in the second slot, we can get Iron Reach, and when you combine that with Fragile Focus, of course, it's going to get a very significant range bump when you haven't taken any damage. But also it can get Kill Clip, which is popular, and Repulsor Brace, where defeating a Void debuff target grants an Overshield, which naturally works pretty well on a Void SMG. But you can see the other potential perks there, so give us your thoughts down below. And then we have the Wizened Rebuke, a high-impact frame arc fusion rifle. And the top barrels include Fluted Barrel, as well as Hammer-Forged Rifling, Chambered Compensator, and Extended Barrel. Then for batteries, we can get Particle Repeater, Enhanced Battery, or Projection Fuse as probably the top options. And then the top trait combos that people are going for at the moment include Subsistence and Iron Grip. And of course, Iron Grip grants weapon stability at the cost of reload speed, but if Subsistence is active, it kind of counters that reload deficit. But other options like Heating Up and Vorpal Weapon are really solid, as is Steady Hands and Successful Warm-Up, or even Under Pressure and Cornered. And so there are some interesting possibilities with a bunch of these different weapons. And since there are so many different kind of activity weapons and then all of the playlist random drops, world drops, yeah, it can get a bit bloated, and so I figured a breakdown of more of the end game rewards from some of the harder activities would be pretty useful. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, a rating down below really does help us out on the channel. Let us know any weapons that are favorites of yours this season, or any really good rolls that you've managed to pick up. And if you want to see more Destiny content, then be sure to get subscribed to the channel so I can keep you up to date. But otherwise for now, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I hope you have an awesome day.